Greetings. Hare Krishna. All right, we're starting with a bit of excitement tonight. Oh, wake me up and wake you up. Greetings, everyone. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship. Tonight we're going to be starting with Spiritual Warrior 2. I hope those of you that have been following us have been following with your 12 qualities, and we also gave 4 technologies for community building, which were very, very important for our lives, because it's about changing consciousness. As I said before, the word in the world today is change, and we as spiritual warriors are also changing and growing our consciousness. As I said, we're going to be discussing from Spiritual Warrior 2 by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, entitled Transforming Lust into Love. I did state last week that I was going to start with 17 practices for success in the School of Love, because I do want to try and follow with different technologies. But in thinking of doing it that way, we decided to try it another way and begin at the beginning, because if we're looking at the success of love, what is love? And he has a chapter in this book, What is Love? I went in to make notes and jot notes, and it just got so exciting that I'm going to share as much of it with you and endeavor to keep my eye-to-eye contact with you. But let's say if there's anybody new coming in, whatever Spiritual Warrior books that we're working with, you can obtain them through Krishna.com store. And Bhaktitirtha Swami, he has brought us this concept of spiritual warriorship in order to help us to grow. And we want to discuss material from these Spiritual Warrior books, because his idea behind the series of Spiritual Warrior books is for us to tune into the concept of spiritual warriorship and use it in a positive way. Because when you think of warrior, you kind of think of, it could be negative. But this is going to be positive, and it's going to help us to grow. In fact, I like to remind us of what he says of spiritual warriors. Spiritual warriors are unconventional, to say the least. We do not fight with conventional weapons. We do not fight with unconventional battlegrounds. And we do not fight for conventional objectives. So what do we fight for? The true spiritual warrior strives to master the weapons of love, humility, compassion, faith, and self-knowledge. Now those, if you've been following us, many of those are one of the qualities, or a quality of a spiritual warrior. And on love, we're going to talk about that tonight. But he tells us that our battleground is the realm of consciousness. And we wage war against ignorance and lust so that we can have a civilization where people live in harmony with each other. That's important. And with God, most important. And awaken and in tune with the effulgent spiritual environment that is available to us. So that's what we're going to do. And he reminds us that the path of the spiritual warrior is not an easy path. It demands courage, determination, discipline, intense compassion, and unconditional love. And we're going to touch on that tonight. But it also requires an understanding that this world is not the final chapter. And we've heard that in scriptures. This world is not our home. So, we are on a mission. So I hope all of you will join the ranks of spiritual warriors in this transcendental army and let us move forward. So we're going to begin tonight with chapter 2 of Spiritual Warrior 2, entitled, What is Love? All of us want to be loved with unconditional eternal love. A love that sees beyond beauty, intelligence, or any other superficial quality. We want to be loved simply because we are. At the same time, we all have a natural, innate tendency to share our love with others. This preoccupation with love arises because in reality, we are eternal, loving beings whose souls are filled with knowledge and bliss. Remember when we started the qualities, the first quality, mastering the mind and controlling the senses, he began us there, telling us that we are eternal beings. We must realize he's giving us knowledge for our spiritual warriorship. Because what does spiritual mean? Spiritual means knowing who we are, who God is, and our relationship and connectedness with him. In this physical embodiment, we are temporarily covered by material energy. But our nature is inherently divine, and we are always seeking that blissful love of the spiritual kingdom where our right fulfillment lies. Now the thing is, most of us, all of us, as he said, we're seeking love. And if we're covered in this material energy, we keep reaching outside of ourselves for that love. But what he says, we are seeking the blissful love of the spiritual kingdom where our real fulfillment lies. But sometimes something always seems to go wrong. Despite our constant search, we usually experience disappointment, finding that our experience of love is temporary. Although we may have tried and failed in a variety of relationships, we persist in believing that the right person is out there somewhere. For some mysterious reason, we just never seem to be in the right place at the right time. The first section, that was the first paragraph of this wonderful chapter, What is Love? He states, I'll read the titles of the sections and then we'll take out parts of it. The world lacks love. The problem arises because we're looking for answers in the wrong places. We have forgotten the spiritual dimension of our life. A society without a spiritual nucleus lacks the, in quotes, cosmic glue to make everything work. He states that love is the cosmic glue that holds us together as we learn to know and relate to one another, ultimately to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as we're learning and we're growing, the ultimate goal, the ultimate direction is to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what our relationship is with Him, and how to connect with Him. He states modern society seems to have forgotten this. But deep down, even though the experience of love often eludes us, we know that love is our birthright. It is as if someone were holding something deliciously tantalizing in front of us, just beyond our reach. We want it. We know it's available. But we are not quite able to grasp it. So what do? We substitute something else, hoping to find happiness in wealth, prestige, or power. Let us look now more deeply at how this works by first examining what love is not. And he begins, love is not about getting something. What are you talking about? That's why I love, I'm going after this person, because they've got something that they can give me. Listen to what he says. Genuine love is not concerned with personal gain, but rather the quality of the exchange between those involved. When we think only of ourselves, trying to arrange matters to get what we want, we are not experiencing love. Unconditional love is never based on trying to receive anything. Instead, it is an experience of giving and a joyful activity in which each participant strives to share more generously than the other. So what he's saying, love is not about getting something. This point is particularly relevant for the society that frequently equates love with sex. Sex provides one of the greatest pleasures we normally experience here, and we try to enjoy it frequently as possible. Practically every major effort to influence our consciousness is based upon trying to entice us sexually. Unfortunately, this attempt to enslave human civilization is succeeding all too well. All we have, as we have already seen, countless advertisements try to stimulate the public sexual desire in order to boost sales. I remember seeing when I first noticed car ads. They put the new car out and they'd have this lady sitting on the car in a bikini. I couldn't quite understand what that had to do with that new car. You're looking for a car, 4 wheels, car. But realizing it caught the attention. And you would think that, if you got that car, then it came with the lady in the bikini. One time folks found out it came with a high interest rate and monthly bills. Consequently, people focus outwardly and do not attribute value to knowing each other or themselves. Again, some words he's repeating, and I'm trying to emphasize them. It's about knowing. Over here he says we learn to know and relate to one another. Here he states again, we do not attribute value to knowing each other or themselves. And this knowing is the spiritual knowledge he's putting into these lectures that he's given, that is written here. It's really spiritual knowing that we are endeavoring to acquire. In fact, because they cannot get beyond the body game, their consciousness remains enslaved and subject to physical passions. However, love has nothing to do with the amount of sexual pleasure we can obtain from another person. Love is not about sex. People often say, let us make love, when they actually mean, let us have sex. When we believe that sex is love, then even incest becomes acceptable. As we mentioned earlier, so many victims carry tremendous wounds, sometimes for life. He mentions incest. He now tells us love has nothing to do with exploitation. Remember the section we're reading? Love is not about getting something. It is not a business deal or an accounting system that requires the actions of one person to be balanced by those of another. Instead, love expresses genuine concern for the well-being of others. This is difficult to understand in our gimme society, which assumes that people always have ulterior motives for their actions. He continues, when we love someone, we want to do something for that person. If we really care for our husband, our wife, our child, our friend, we will be excited about each opportunity to serve. And once we have rendered service, we will become even more excited, because we will be happy to know we have been able to exist. Excited and happy. Do you feel that in your relationship with others? Think on that. Whenever a difficulty arises, we will be eager to do something for our beloved, to demonstrate our caring and commitment without expecting anything in return. He continues, love is not a feeling. What you saying? What you talking about? Let's listen. Love is not a feeling. Most of us consider love to be a feeling that ebbs and flows according to the circumstances. But genuine love is not linked to what we feel. Now we're talking genuine love. Nor does it depend on any external conditions. Real love is divine and cannot exist separately from the source, which is God. So the source of love. I want to read something. I think I'll stop here to read something from Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Bhagavad Gita. I thought I had it all. Turn to 12:9. Okay, 11. Oh, here it is. Okay. Just remember, real love is divine, cannot exist separately from the source, which is God. Now this is 12:9. It's Krishna talking to Arjuna on the battlefield. He says to him, "My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me." We know Bhakti Yoga is love, serving God with loving devotion, linking back, because yoga means to link. So to link back to God, which is the source of love, we just told. In the purport, this is what Prabhupada said. I'm taking an excerpt from the purport. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure. Being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga service, these senses can become purified. And in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, he's given an example here. I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. How many of us are getting out there every day and giving service somewhere? And what are we waiting for? That paycheck. Gratefully, many of us are still in that position. And the master also is not in love. He takes our service. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. Spiritual life. We're going to be hearing that phrase, and I brought it up when we were reading the 4 technologies. What was the first one? To treat everyone that we meet as if the success of our spiritual life depended on that interaction. And I remember stating when I first was studying those, I really had to stop and examine what my spiritual life meant to me. And as you do that, we can all take time to do inventory. Bhakti Tirtha Swami told us with these qualities, you have to do self-examination. You have to see where your weaknesses are, where your doubts are. And then you have to begin to work on yourself. It's not about pointing out there and blaming others. So, spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. And we got an example of that from the scripture with Ambarishu. Used his legs to walk to the temple, his hands to clean the temple, his eyes to see the deities, his ears to hear. We can use our senses to practice that devotional service to the Lord. Now, Prabhupada continues, this love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart. So as we stated here, Bhakti Tirtha stated, it's there, it's in us, that love is there. And there, Love of God is manifested in different ways, but it is contaminated by material association. Now, the heart has to be purified of the material association, and then that dormant, natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. I wanted to bring that to you. That love is dormant in it. So when we're talking about what love is not, it's not getting what he's telling us, these things that help us realize what we really want is to know the source of that love, which is God. He says further, love is not something we can turn on and off like a faucet. In our society, we often do not understand this. A man and a woman may make marriage vows and then change their minds in a few months or years. In such a state of consciousness, we are constantly looking for something outside of ourselves, instead of tapping the wellspring of love within. And we just saw Prabhupada gives us good idea by service. And the next paragraph, you get a chance, Bhagavad Gita 12:9, because the next section, next paragraph, he tells us steps to develop that service. Although we may occasionally be disturbed by someone's actions, true love remains firm because it is based on something far deeper than mere sentiment. When love is sentimental, any upset may suddenly turn the object of our affection into an enemy. And that's where it is. We just said love is not getting something. And what he's saying, if you're looking to get something from that external relationship and you don't get it, you get upset. And then you turn, that person becomes the enemy in your life. He says, many people have difficulty establishing meaningful relationships with others. Once the initial infatuation wears off, they are disappointed to discover that their relationship was reactive rather than proactive. That's an interesting way to look at it, huh? A proactive person has vision-centered principles and a philosophical orientation, whereas a reactive person is preoccupied with self-centered concerns such as eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Reactive people view everything in terms of personal enjoyment. For them, love is a feeling that enhances their sense of well-being, so that whenever they're not getting what they want, they withdraw. On the other hand, when we are genuinely loving, we are not concerned with ourselves at all. Love is a verb. We empathize, appreciate, share, help, and give. We're not trying to feel good or control the environment to enhance our own pleasure. This expression I read to somebody said, "Oh, that's deep. This is deep." Yeah, it is deep, but it's again, if we've been listening to his instructions and readings I've been sharing with you, he's been putting this in for us to really grasp who we really are, and that we are eternal beings. And if we're eternal beings, then we these things won't affect us. I refer back to Bhagavad Gita again, chapter 2, when Arjuna, if you know the story, was quite disturbed about going on the battlefield to fight his family members, and was ready, in fact, to stop fighting. And it says, when he turned to Krishna, "I don't know what to do, I don't want to fight." And it says, Krishna smiled and said to him, in other words, "You don't know the difference between the material and the spiritual." And then he went on to instruct him, give him Bhagavad Gita, the instruction. But the part, and in chapter 2, he begins by defining the soul, the spirit soul within, which is a part of him. And he tells him it can't be cut, it can't be drowned. And I like to add to that, it can't get hurt feelings, because it's transcendental, it's a part of God. So therefore, and this is what Bhakti Tirtha Swami is encouraging us and impressing on us, that eternality, that part of us, not the temporary part that we get out of feeling. He goes on, the next one, many of us will relate to this. Love is not always pleasant. Oh yeah. He states, love is not defined by our pleasant feelings. Pain can be an integral part of love. Although most of us would prefer to experience happiness and eliminate pain from our relationships, this attitude is based on a desire to satisfy our senses. Genuine love can indeed bring us great happiness, yet it can also cause extreme suffering. If we examine our lives even a little, we notice that our greatest pain has almost invariably come from relationships with those we love. Perhaps we have tried to give and were not fully appreciated. Or perhaps we wanted to make a loving connection and somehow could not. Who cannot remember the deep hurt of being betrayed, disappointed, neglected, or abandoned? If we're in this material world, I guess the whole room would raise a hand. At the same time, our greatest happiness has also come from relationships with others. He states, it is a paradox that love, the most healing force there is, can also make us so vulnerable to pain. In a loving relationship, each difficulty in our lives becomes a challenge to glorify and serve the Lord. Oh, can I repeat that? Just let go. Many of you now may be re-experiencing some hurt and betrayal or disappointment, but stay in this moment. Just stay in this moment. because that's all in the past. Let's come to this moment and hear what we're being given to get us through that, past that, and to a transcendental level in a spiritual life. He states, in loving relationships, each difficulty in our lives becomes a challenge to glorify and serve the Lord. And whatever loving relationship, there will be difficulties. But it's, what is it? Are you proactive or reactive in that? We just left that. And can you see it, accept it, that it is a challenge to glorify and serve the Lord? When we care about someone, the hard times are wonderful because they demonstrate the need for greater communication. Because our partner did not receive our words or actions in a loving spirit, we see a need for love. Most behavior, he's told us many times, when we're interacting, is really a cry for love. This gives us an exciting opportunity to serve and to support the well-being of the other person, as long as we're not looking about getting something. Love is not about getting something. We've been there, and now he's going further. When we are in control, we feel good about everything. Isn't that so? But as soon as events do not go as planned, we may become unwilling to accommodate our partner. Whenever we experience doubts about the relationship, we turn away. What is that, huh? What's going on? I wanted this, you didn't give me this. I said this, we know that. But listen, these doubts may arise because we lack strong faith or feel insecure. What was one of the 12 qualities? Firm faith. I hope you're reviewing them. It comes up and we can see how we can apply them practically in our everyday life. And right now we're dealing with relationship. We lack strong faith or feel insecure. Often we project our fears and phobias onto our partners and onto our environment to avoid facing the fact that the problem is within our own consciousness. Remember the second or third of those 4 principles we went through. If there's a problem, see it as my fault first. How everything just weaves together. Then, often, I'll repeat that, we project our fears and phobias onto our partners and onto our environment to avoid facing the fact that the problem is within our own consciousness. Then, even if somebody gives us a compliment, we may think suspiciously, what do you mean by that? Some people remain entrenched in a mood of negativity no matter what happens. And I'm sure we all know people like that. So he tells us our goal as spiritual warriors is to become so loving that nothing seems to bother us. In this state, we will not be affected by negativity at all. Instead, we will be grateful for negative comments as well as praise, and may even interpret harsh words in a loving way. At first, this may seem naive, but actually, such behavior reflects strong faith in the Lord and a willingness to share our faith and love with others. So it comes back to what we read, to know the source of love. The source of love is God, Krishna. He is within us. He's in our hearts. He tells us in Bhagavad Gita, he's in everyone's heart. And the more we study and the more we talk about him, the more we hear about him, this begins to build. And the more we notice and observe how he's reciprocating in our lives. So strong faith in the Lord is important. And then you share that faith and love with others. All of us, he says, actually have the capacity to become so fixed in our love that everything in the environment only helps us to be more loving. That is the mood of a true spiritual warrior. What else love is not? He says jealousy and envy are not love. However, even in spiritual circles, people often do not understand how to love one another. Despite a seeming commitment to a spiritual lifestyle, individuals may experience envy and jealousy of their peers. For example, if one person is advancing spiritually, others who are trapped in material consciousness may be unable to feel happiness for that individual. Instead, they become jealous and mean-hearted. People who worship fame, money, and material comforts are attached to temporary aspects of life. Ultimately, they are destined to be unhappy because everything temporary deteriorates. And again, what comes is that as we gain the knowledge, have the knowledge, that there's a difference between material and spiritual, and even our material consciousness of being jealous and mean-spirited because someone else in our environment seems to be advancing spiritually. We have to get our spiritual life in balance, and this is what he's encouraging us here. Everything temporary deteriorates. They are condemning themselves to loss and frustration. This pursuit of selfish pleasures is a general feature of modern Western culture. In the process of climbing our way to the top, we are conditioned to think, I only win if you fail. What is that about? The crabs in the basket or something? We know that one. In order to build ourselves up, we're eager to see someone else's demise. We may even sabotage a potential rival, believing that is the way to become successful. However, we should remember that whenever we feel sad, disturbed, and envious of another's success, we are unqualified for the blessings of spiritual life. In these circumstances, we must work on ourselves to dissolve our selfish motivation. Self-work. We must work on ourselves. How many times in hearing these teachings here, we reminded we must work on ourselves. And if you're studying and you have a teacher and a mentor that can help you and encourage you, you don't run away from working on yourself, especially if your desire is to advance spiritually. So we must work on ourselves to dissolve our selfish motivations so that eventually we can reach the point of being happy and enthusiastic for the accomplishment of others. Do you get happy when you see someone moving ahead and becoming more enlivened in their spiritual life? We are always enhanced rather than diminished by another person's growth. This is quite a bit of food for thought. Before I go further, I found something else from Srila Prabhupada on love. In Journey of Self-Discovery, Krishna consciousness is loving consciousness. Srila Prabhupada says to his audience, everyone is frustrated. Husbands, wives, boys, girls, everywhere there's frustration because our loving propensity is not being used properly. Just finishing that jealousy and envy, we can, if we're in that frame of mind, we're not using that loving propensity. Srila Prabhupada then goes on to explain how love is most fully experienced when directed towards the Supreme Person, Krishna, who then perfectly and completely reciprocates with everyone. That is the secret of lasting happiness. And this is what the next section states. The source of love. Everybody, I've been telling you what it's not. Yeah, what is it? The source of love. We must go to the source to get the love. If the lights go out, the first thing you check to see if the fuse is working. You got to go to the source where that light comes from in the house. As an example. Now that we have seen what love is not, let us look more closely at what love is and where it comes from. The origin of love can only be found in a place far beyond the material world. In fact, deep love cannot exist independently from the Supreme Lord. Deep love cannot exist independently from the Supreme Lord because He is the source and storehouse of everything. Those who lay claim to love without a connection to the Godhead may think they have valuable diamonds, but are actually in possessions of only cut glass. Because they lack the essential spiritual connection, in reality they have nothing. Genuinely spiritual people, on the other hand, are automatically loving because they have conduits for God's own energy. As they radiate divine love, they naturally share it and help others to connect with it. You just hear this: the origin of love can only be found in a place far beyond this material world. In fact, deep love cannot exist independently from the Supreme Lord, because He is the source and storehouse of everything. And as we said earlier, He has told us He's in our heart. Yes, we're in the material world, but if we connect with that Lord God within our hearts, we can be in a transcendental consciousness rather than a material consciousness and experience the higher. He continues, our longing for eternal love is a sign that we are out of our natural state. This temporary earthly condition does not fulfill us, because physical bodies and material interactions always come to an end. We want to be loved eternally because we are imperishable, spiritual beings for whom love is an expression of the soul. Ultimately, all major spiritual traditions confirm that we are living entities, we are loving entities who are out of place in the material world. Let's say in the scriptures, this world is not our home. They teach that we have a chance to experience far more love than we normally encounter in our daily lives. As we become more loving and make efforts to serve others, we gradually enter into the realm of divine love. When we offer such genuine love to others, we receive much more in return. Once we develop a deep spiritual connection, we begin to experience the greater pleasures that we had previously anticipated, but did not find in material life. We discover a love that is endless, unlimited by time and circumstance, and completely fulfilling. And that comes from knowing who the source of love is, connecting with that source, serving devotional services, Prabhupada said, that I just read. We've heard the phrase unconditional love, and I imagine most of us can understand. Let's see what Bhakti Tirtha Swami says. Unconditional love is spiritual. And that's who we are on the path of spiritual warriorship. And we're hearing who the source is, where this love is. And we're reading from Bhagavad Gita. So we are spiritual beings endeavoring to increase our spirituality. He says, unconditional love, then, is beyond material concerns. It exists in a realm that transcends the mind and the body and is related to the nature of the soul. It is natural. Its natural expression is free from limitations of the body, such as birth, disease, old age, and death. Again, my mind went back to chapter 2 in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is describing the qualities of the soul. We need to study that and know that that's us. He's talking to us what we have, so that when we hear this, if we have been covered with that material energy, we begin to awaken that dormant love and understand. Unconditional love must be just that, without conditions, unmotivated, and uninterrupted. Such love is beyond any effort to be good, upright, ethical, or moral. Many good people only do the right thing to gain recognition and approval. In contrast, an action based on unconditional love is one we perform even if others blame us for it. For example, a mother may know that her child does not want to stop playing to eat dinner. But undeterred by the child's anger, she calls him into the house anyway, because she knows he needs nourishment. The elements that make up the physical world are all a part of God's separated or external energies, and not directly related to deeper aspects of the divine. Pure, unmotivated love, on the other hand, is transcendental to anything material and can ultimately connect us with the Lord's potent internal energies. The more we know about those we love, the more our love can be deep and substantive. Genuine love is based on an awareness of particular attributes and qualities. When we know the beloved well, we gain a profound appreciation of that person and understand how to serve most effectively. On the other hand, if we do not know much about someone, our unfamiliarity can produce difficulties because we lack the proper understanding to develop effective communication and action. It's happened, I'm sure, in our lives. Somebody will tell you somebody they met or somebody they know and start talking about this person, he or she. They're intelligent, they're kind, they're gentle. When they get through talking, I want to meet this person. I want to know this person. And this is what we're doing as we're studying about the Supreme Lord and hearing about Him. It develops more and more. We want more connection. In the same way, we cannot love God without a great appreciation for who the Lord is, what the Lord does, and what the Lord desires from us. And that's the knowledge that has been spoken of. I see it is 8 o'clock. I had a little bit more. Whoa. I could leave some of this. Are there any questions?
Yes.
There are. Okay, let me stop here because we can continue. Let's hear what's coming in.
Okay. Holly asks,
Speak so I can hear you, not lean over.
what's the medium between unconditional love and selfish desire? Because she says, we must learn to find our happiness in serving others. But this seems to be heavy and piercing to the heart.
I'm not sure. What is the question?
The question is,
exactly is how do we find what?
Find our happiness in serving others.
How do we find our happiness in serving others?
Rather than just only thinking about ourselves.
Okay, if we're serving, the first thing is knowing the source of love and happiness is the Supreme within the heart. And knowing that He's in everyone's heart. As we said earlier, He is the source of everything. If we are serving, recognizing that the Lord is there, as we serve, we should also be receiving. Now, this does not always happen. But again, it's our attitude and our motivation. Conditional love must be just that, without conditions, unmotivated, and uninterrupted. Such love is beyond any effort to be good, upright, ethical, or moral. But again, we have to go back to where he states if we're not able to do that, it's due to lack of faith and feeling insecure. So then we have to go to where he tells us that we must work on ourselves to, it says here, dissolve selfish motivation. But we must work on ourselves to develop firm faith. We must work on ourselves to get connected with the source of love, the Supreme Lord within our heart. And that faith, as we do that, our faith increases. As our faith increases, our security, feeling secure, increases because we are feeling the reciprocation from the Lord in the heart. As he said here, if we're sad and it's not, I guess, going the way we want, then we have to really work on ourselves more and endeavor, we've been saying, to give without wanting something in return. Love is not about getting something. I hope that's helpful, because it's continual study. Is that the only question? Okay. Because she could hear me, right? When you ask the question and I respond, she hears me. Okay. Okay. Okay, no other question. Should I go on?
She says thank you, Holly.
Okay. And we can talk more, Holly, or write to each other. With all the, he says, gathering of sages, with all the Hollywood depictions of sentimental love so prevalent in our mechanized society, many of us have difficulty understanding the true meaning of spiritual love. And this is what we've been, spiritual love means you're giving from that place in your heart where God is, and you're giving to serve the Lord in that environment and in that person. And we do have difficulty understanding true meaning of spiritual love. We have little opportunity to go beyond a bodily relationship or to view others as anything but extensions of ourselves. And we've also said that and has stated, when something is going on sometimes in a relationship, it's giving us an opportunity to see something about ourselves. Because as we become more secure, as we increase our faith, as we connect more with the Supreme Personality of Godhead within us, we develop the qualities, because we have the qualities within us of true expression and true love. But if something in another person is agitating us, annoying us, it's because it's a part of us we're seeing and we don't like it. This is why self-examination and self-reflection is important. Once we have once we have worked on ourselves, once we have seen these qualities and realized it's affecting our consciousness and have decided to move them out the way and fill that space with a love of God and serving God, then that behavior in the other person will not disturb us. We are no longer disturbed. I believe I read the letter from Bhaktitirtha Swami when he told me about that. So he says here, these approaches to love are so pervasive that they even affect our attitude towards God. We have a tendency to think of the Lord as someone who can fulfill our personal desires, and so we have no interest in serving Him selflessly in an unmotivated, unconditional way. So how are we serving the Lord? And then he tells a story of, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, of ancient sages meeting, who came together to address the question, what is the highest human activity? These yogis were eager to discover the most expedient processes for attaining the highest level of spiritual development. They were prepared to stay together and ponder the question for years if necessary, until they could come to some satisfactory conclusion. Despite the fact that they came from many different traditions, they all shared the common goal of wanting to experience the greatest spiritual truths. What eventually emerged from the meeting was the understanding that spirituality is never a matter of one creed or dogma versus another. The sage did not dwell on such temporary conceptions, nor did he imply that one teaching was higher than any other. Instead, he spoke of the importance of knowledge, service, and love of God beyond any externals, explaining that love and service from the true foundations for are the true foundations for self-realization. Let me repeat that. Instead, he spoke of the importance of knowledge, knowing who you are, who God is, what is your relationship with him, what is your connection. That is knowledge. Service, knowing that this God that you're connected to and who is within your heart and is giving you love and filling you with love is there for you to serve. He's not there for your service. Your what is it called? Something giver, he uses the word. But he's there for you to serve, and the more you serve, the more he reciprocates. And he says, service and love of God beyond any externals. Explaining that love and service form the true foundation for self-realization. When we love God unconditionally, we do not pray for relief from anxiety, distress, or frustration. Ooh. Such prayers are not indicative of high-level devotion. Instead, we need to learn how to share our love by offering unmotivated, uninterrupted service. So we're to learn. I'm going to stop there for tonight. Any more questions?
Libby has a comment that she's had a chance to apply one of the four principles of looking at herself first when there's a problem.
Helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Is that Libby? Where are you, Libby? I'd like to know where folks are writing in from. Did she say? You lost her?
California.
California. All right. Thank you for coming in and being there. And thank you for sharing that you got help. That's exciting. I like to hear that. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Go ahead.
Street Straw. She
Okay.
asks, how do we know who to serve? Because the Bhagavad Gita describes action in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And there's like a reaction when you serve certain people in the different modes, or when you serve in those modes.
How do you know who to serve? Because the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, what I feel like saying, if you've read Bhagavad Gita and you've read about the modes of nature and the qualities and behaviors and eating habits and even how in the different modes how they die, and you are willing to serve, if you get to the place of unconditional love, serving God unconditionally and want to serve your fellow living entity unconditionally, you will know. You offer to serve, you do what, if it's not, further in this, if it's not in a pleasant situation, or it's not working, or they're overly negative, you know to back off and to move out of the way. But the initial thing is to offer in an unmotivated, unconditional way a service. It may be accepted, it may not be. But you don't get angry, you don't become, proactive. But you know you made that effort, and that individual may not be ready at that time, or may be so covered but still there's a soul in there. And that soul, if you can just, I call it plant a seed of serving, and then go on about your business. You don't get stuck in that, especially if it's mode of ignorance. You offer if you can. If it's not reciprocated, you keep going, but be careful of what your thinking is about the situation. You know you've offered, and it wasn't, so it's okay. I usually say, dear Lord, you take care of that person, and then I get on out the way. How's that? Okay?
More questions.
Okay.
Libby says, thank you so much for all that you share in the William Journey.
Oh.
And Bhuvan Mohan says Hari Bol, and he says he's online with Messenger, Holly, Libby, and
Libby's
I said Holly.
Okay. And who else?
Libby and Messenger.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being there. I hope what was offered tonight has been helpful. This is a fascinating subject. I've been reading and studying and examining myself, and hopefully I'm offering from a loving place tonight. Anything else? More? Okay.
Bhakti and Carol asked, you said love is not a feeling. How do we perceive it then?
Love is not a feeling. Most of us consider love to be a feeling that ebbs and flows according to circumstances. But genuine love is not linked to what we feel, nor does it depend on any external conditions. Real love is divine and cannot exist separately from the source, which is God. So when you're connected and connecting and growing spiritually, and when we are genuinely loving, we are not concerned with ourselves at all. That feeling is sort of what he calls sentimental. When love is sentimental, any upset may suddenly turn the object of our affection into an enemy. But when we are genuinely loving, and when we know that God is the source, we empathize, appreciate, share, help, and give. And we're not trying to feel good or control the environment to enhance our own pleasure. We're serving the Lord. Does that help? Got it? Thank you for your question.
Bhakti Carol has another question. My mother might be about to leave her body, but she is very negative in her feelings about Hare Krishnas. How can I help her before she leaves in a way she will tolerate?
Does she read the Bible? Is she consider herself a religious person, or in any way? Should she say she believes in God? The answer? Again,
yes,
Libby.
She's a Christian.
Okay. Then you just help her remember God. Help her remember the teachings of Jesus. Love God with your whole mind, your whole heart, your whole soul. Love your neighbors, yourself. Different things. If you could read the Bible to her, if she's nearing death, we can't. Krishna consciousness only means being conscious of God. Krishna consciousness, God consciousness. Of course, with our philosophy, we get the deeper understanding of who God is, where God lives, and our true connection with Him. But if we are in that understanding, then we can lovingly help others in whatever religion they're in to get a greater sense of God as they know God. And so read the Psalms to her. I don't know how close to leaving she is, but read the Psalms to her. Read her whatever messages of Jesus about forgiving. He talks about forgiving and how He died. Father, forgive them. Try to talk to if there's anybody she feels she needs to forgive. She could follow in His footsteps of forgiving. And just, try to chant in the room when you can, or whisper it, or in your own heart, because if you are chanting and you know Krishna is who Krishna is and making a connection, that will help her soul, because it's the soul that needs. So right now, the soul wants to hear about God by whatever name, but to hear it. So talk to her, read to her from the scripture, and just remind her of how often Jesus called the name of God and was ready to go home to Him and, be with Him. And just be as loving as you can. Stroke her. Just be with her in a loving way, unconditionally, because she too is a child of God. I hope that's helpful.
And Das from Switzerland says Hare Krishna, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. That's just Das? Das?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for being there. It encourages me to give more, because I'm getting excited. I'm stopping next week. We're going to begin. We're still on the chapter, What is Love? We're going to go to Love is Unmotivated Service, Becoming Transcendental, and Daily Life is a Training Ground. And time permitting, we will begin the School of Love. That's an exciting chapter. It's the introduction in Spiritual Warrior 2, Transforming Lust into Love by B.T. Swami. And as I said, if you don't have it, you can get it through Krishna.com and follow me. And there's a whole chapter on what is lust. But we want to do the School of Love next, and then we'll begin the 17 practices. I thank you all for coming, and thank you, Krishna, Hare Krishna. I got a new technician, if I'm still on. I'm trying to look pleasant. There's the blue paper with the directions. Anu or Uddhava should turn it off. Am I still on? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.